This next section is called Robots Do the Darndest Things. For example, what is the first thing you want your robot to do for you? That's right, the things you really don't want to do. That's probably at least part of the reason that researchers created Atlas, a humanoid robot that placed second in DARPA's robotics challenge. To keep it challenged and active, its human creators taught it how to sweep the floor and vacuum.
Now, Atlas is terrifying, but weirdly not while it's sweeping.
Yeah.
No. Guys, do you not remember the valuable lessons taught to us in the Karate Kid documentaries? They're teaching this robot how to do karate and kung fu. I sweep the leg.
Got it. Okay, got it. I was slow, but yeah.
One thing I want to say is, first of all, Atlas is sort of like a robotics platform. It was actually used by several of the teams in the DARPA Grand Challenge. A lot of different teams used the robot as their base, and then all the software they developed was what allowed the robot to move around. And while I make a joke about teaching robots karate and kung fu, the truth of the matter is that certain things that are very easy for your typical human to do still remain a big challenge for robots, like maintaining balance and shifting forward when you have to make a certain type of movement. These are actually very tricky. And the Grand Challenge taught us that, because there were a lot of different, very simple tasks that robots just would fall over while attempting to do, like walking through a doorway. And being able to make sure that your technology is working the way you intended is obviously critical in all forms of tech. But with robotics in particular, this is still a very young discipline as technology goes. So very important to have these kind of tasks to sort of test out the capabilities of your future death machine.
Yeah, you watch these compilations. When I watch these compilations, I can basically hear the Benny Hill theme playing in my mind as I watch
sax.
it.
Yeah, there's something inside me that dies a little every time.
Yeah.
It just hurts to see it. But it is a good demonstration of how robotics. It's amazing how far it's advanced, but we're still at the level where it's much easier to design a robot that is specifically meant to do a single task. It's easy to make a robot that does that fairly well. It's harder to make a robot that does it really well, like demonstrably at least as well as or better than a human. And then it's orders of magnitude more difficult to design a robot that can do lots of stuff well, not just one thing. And I think that's a fascinating area of study. I've talked about it a lot on my various shows. And so even though there is something comical about seeing Atlas sweeping the floor, I totally get it.
Well, and even the researchers say that the reason for those tasks is not that they are lazy. Of course, they're going to say that. But it's so that they can push new code through to kind of keep it working, keep it kind of, busy. Like they're tasking the robot with sweeping the floors because they want to keep it busy. They don't want it to get lazy and get soft. No. Essentially, is what they're saying. So
no, it is amazing though that like you could teach a child. It's like the grasping the penny in your pocket. That's the thing that's like easy for a 2 or 3 year old, but for a robot, it's harder. Yep. So I have another robot story. We hope that these robots don't fail. They have one task. You have one job, nanobots. Christina Bonington over at Refinery 29 had this story today. Tiny robot suits that sperm wear to guide them where they need to go. Fortune also wrote about these advances, but they call them tiny robot chauffeurs for the sperm. They lead the sperm to the place they need to eventually go, which is the egg, if you didn't know.
I heard that somewhere.
They lose their way. Mobility is a problem.
Whoa.
So here's how it works. If you're watching the video, you can see a little bit how it works. They coat the sperm. Researchers are coating the sperm in microscopic...
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for the Benny Hill theme. I wondered if that was going to happen.
Microscopic metal polymers that they can adjust their movements with magnets. You can do this inside a woman or in a petri dish. It's a new method of fertilization. It was performed in Germany's Institute for Integrative Nanosciences in Dresden. Do you care to comment on this, Jason or Jonathan?
I'm just kind of amazed at what we're watching here, that this is even possible. This stuff blows me away.
I
don't have much more than that.
I somewhat object to the term robot only because I think of it more as almost like a capsule. Like if you put me in a big metal capsule and then you use magnetic fields to push me around, you wouldn't say I was Iron Man. I wouldn't be in a robotic suit or anything along those lines. That being said, I think the technology is phenomenal. And it's another example of a lot of tech in the nano world, nano and micro world, where we're using things like magnetic fields or even ultrasonic frequencies to manipulate very tiny things to go where we want them to go. So I got to admit, I never would have thought of this particular implementation, and it's actually really cool.
And apparently it's cheaper than in vitro fertilization and an artificial insemination, which are expensive. So that was the idea, to bring that price down.
Okay, well then, Jonathan, if you object with that being called a robot, I think you'll be at home again here. Robots often have harsh metallic frames, as we all know, uncovered by skin. As humans, the skin serves many purposes, but one thing we have over robots is the ability to remember sensory information when we touch or grab anything. Researchers in Singapore are working on this and have created a flexible artificial skin that detects electrical resistance when its robotic hands apply force on an object. That data is stored for up to 1 week in a thin memory device along with that. So, it's kind of talking about pulling the coin out of the pocket, right? Like that's an action that very fine motor skill action that we know. Our hands in our pocket, that's a coin. We can feel the ridges on the coin, so we know that that's what we're reaching for when we pull it out. Robots don't necessarily have that sense, and even if they have that sense, they don't necessarily have the memory to remember that the next time that they reach in and go, oh yeah, that's the coin I put in my pocket. So this is a way of kind of enhancing that, or just enabling that to begin with.
It's actually really, really cool, the idea of using something similar to capacitance touchscreens, the change of electrical resistance in order to indicate the amount of pressure that the robotic hand or whatever limb is placing upon various objects. And then you could couple that with machine learning to teach a robot the threshold of pressure that is appropriate for any given type of object. So that way you can pick up a nice big object and use the right amount of pressure, and or you could pick up something very delicate and make sure it doesn't go squish, just like grape, to go back to our Karate Kid.